Chapter 5. A Discourse on Sustainable Development. What is sustainable development? The concept of sustainable development is a notion around which legally significant expectations regarding environment conduct have begun to crystallize. The Rio de Janeiro Conference of 1992 and the Johannesburg 2002 Earth Summit promote strategies to fully integrate the relationship between the environment and development. The initiative is a testimony to the currency of sustainable development in global polity. The issue of sustainable development is now seen as the problem that is confronting humanity. It is necessary, therefore, to firstly understand what sustainable development stands for. Sharikchandra Lele describes sustainable development as a new way of life and approach to social and economic activities for all societies, rich and poor, which is compatible with the preservation of the environment. Lele, 1991, 607-621, while Pierce and Watford capture the irreplaceable environmental dimension in sustainable development in the following definition: sustainable development describes a process in which the natural resource base is not allowed to deteriorate. It emphasizes the hitherto unappreciated role of the environmental quality and environmental inputs in the process of raising real income and quality of life. Pierce and Watford, 1993, 8. World Commission on Environment and Development (WCED) defines sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. WCED, 1987, 43. The definition contains within it two key concepts, namely the concept of needs, in particular the essential needs of the world poor, to which overriding priority should be given, and the idea of limitations imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. WCED's thesis of sustainable development posits that the present generation has been reckless and wasteful both in its exploitation and use of natural resources by pursuing a series of socio-economic and industrial policies which endanger global environmental security. It urged governments to pursue a new developmental strategy that can both ensure continued economic growth and ecological stability with less exploitation and use of natural resources. It condemned the inequalities within and among nations and called for a restructuring of contemporary economic relations to guarantee an equitable distribution of national and international wealth. Natufe, 2001, 2, WCED, 1987, 45-54. 62-65. The position of WCED was informed on the basis, among others, that the attempt in the 1970s to create a new international economic order, NIEO, based on a Charter of Economic Rights and Duties of the UN did not make reference to and took little account of the impact of development activities on the environment. However, the 1980s strategies, primarily aimed at environmental protection, took account of the need for development while recognizing that the environment could not in all cases sustain unlimited development. Sustainable development implies three primary factors of economic, social and environment. An economically sustainable system must be able to produce goods and services on a continuing basis and maintain manageable economy without jeopardizing sectoral balances of economic activities of the country. Environmentally sustainable system must maintain a stable resource base, avoiding over-exploitation of renewable resource systems or environmental sink functions, and depleting non-renewable resources only to the extent that investment is made in adequate substitutes. This includes maintenance of biodiversity, atmospheric stability and other ecosystem functions not ordinarily classified as economic resources. The last factor must achieve distributional equity, adequate provision of social services including health and education, gender equity and political accountability, transparency and participation. This must be with dynamic understanding of human rights that is developing very rapidly. For instance, the rights to life and liberty have been recognized, and they include a healthy environment and development. Both have developed to a stage of recognition and enforceability under both national and international legal regimes. ACO, 2005, 70. Bearing in mind the social and human-centered development, Stockholm Conference 1972, Principle 1. The definitions of the concept of sustainable development have broken the hitherto limited, instrumental view of conservation and development. Now it encompasses some of the positive moral dimensions of the new social paradigm expressed in authentic integral development, ecological holistic worldview, reverential development, ecosophical development, just, participatory eco-development, communalism, and desirable society. Engel, 1990, 10. At the end of the day, any development that will be sustaining, especially in the developing countries, will include the following: increases in real income, especially for the wretched of the earth. This implies poverty eradication on the long run. 2. Improvement in health and nutritional status, especially children and young mothers who are vulnerable to most preventable diseases. 3. Education achievement. IV. Access to resources. V. A fairer, equitable distribution of income. The basic salary of the least paid worker should be adequate to maintain his nuclear family. Vi. Increases in basic freedoms and guaranteed security of all citizens, respect and responsible relationship with ecosystem. Many of the factors in respect of development above were also captured and reflected in the formal administration of the country. Obasanjo Administration Ad-Ob. 2001, 187 and 188, rightly observed, especially on the social and economic front, that provision of basic social services which the Human Development Reports have persistently canvassed as the safest and quickest means to poverty alleviate and human development. Accordingly, the administration embarked upon programs on universal basic education, primary health care, the National Program on Immunization, and the Poverty Alleviation Program to make concrete and measurable impact on poverty reduction and progress in human development. Its economic policy was then designed around the principal objectives of meeting the global commitment of halving poverty by the year 2015. In the immediate form, the policy objectives and targets were set with the belief that the basic needs of all can and must be met, now, as a matter of people's fundamental rights. Correctly, it affirmed that every Nigerian has a right to basic social services of basic education, access to functional health care, immunization for children, employment for youth, living wages for workers, clean water for all, and security of lives and property. In essence, it proclaimed that development cannot be anything but the fundamental responsibility of government and the basic rights of citizens, in inviting every development partner, the private sector, the civil society and the international community among others, to join hands with the government to develop Nigeria. It enumerated some challenges in priority areas to include provision of basic social and essential services, education, health, clean water, food security, etc. Rehabilitation of dilapidated social and economic infrastructure. Creating new employment and income opportunities, especially for youth, school leavers and rural folks. IV. Strengthening institutions of governance at all levels, including adequate attention to human rights, conflict prevention and consensus building. Environmental consequences of developmental activities. Nigeria covers a total surface area of 923,768 square kilometers with the coastline of about 900 kilometers long. It has a population of 140,003,542 with the breakdown of 71,709,859 males and 68,293,683 females, and 3.2% annual population growth rate, which makes it the largest population in Africa. Nigeria harbors more than 250 ethnic groups. By the 1993 estimate, Nigeria has the land use of 44% permanent pastures, 3% permanent crops, while forest and woodland cover 12% and others 8%. About 75% of Nigeria's land is suitable for agriculture, but only 14% is actually under cultivation. 3.2% of arable land is irrigated, and between 1990 and 1995 deforestation was running at the rate of 0.9 per annum. Adeleke, 2003, 2 and 3. Apart from petroleum, oil and gas, Nigeria is rich in limestone, coal, tin, columbite, gold, silver, lead, zinc, gypsum, glass sands, clays, asbestos, graphite, iron ore, stone and zircon. It imports machinery, chemicals, transportation equipment, manufactured goods and food while exporting petroleum and petroleum products, cocoa, palm oil, groundnuts, cotton, timber and rubber. As soon as Nigeria became independent in October 1960, it embarked upon the road to development as mapped out by the West without any serious ideological reflection on the appropriateness or otherwise of the type of development it wanted to embrace. It ultimately embraced capitalist developmental paradigm as the necessary instrument to realize its developmental objectives. In its current neoliberal form, this type of development is broken down into economic, social and political aspects. One aspect is discussed below, as Ibinu rightly identified and explained. Economic development in the paradigm consists of economic growth measured principally in terms of gross domestic product, industrialization, capital formation, infrastructure, for example roads, telephones and electricity, strong balance of payments as well as economic efficiency. Economic development is to be achieved among others through economic policies that support the free market, reduces state participation in the economy and expands the private economy, enhances liberalization of foreign trade and enunciates a domestic price structure, especially of capital and foreign exchange that support all these. Ibinu, 2004. 2. The implicit assumption in this notion of economic development is that there is only one possible way to development, namely the universal Western type of economic development by which every country must go through. It must follow a process starting from a primitive, traditional, agricultural, low productivity economy to a developed capitalist economy of the West. By implication, the gap and lenses of Western behavioral patterns and norms must be worn in order to arrive at the desired economic development. Furthermore, the implication includes the abandonment of traditional values and cosmology, and structures of extended family, empathy and primordial solidarity which must be sacrificed at the altar of economic growth, efficiency and mobility of labor and capital. Along the road to economic development, Nigeria exhibits the resemblance of development in its socio-economic institutions and programs, but deep down there is the reality of poverty and environmental degradation with its communal environmental conflicts as experienced, for instance, in Ogoni Land, Tivjukan crisis, Chad-Nigeria border conflict between Nigeria and Cameroon, and Ife-Modekeke crisis, Eganjobi, 2005. 272. In order to overcome poverty, Nigeria embarked upon many strategies which are yet to bring to an end the reality of poverty in the lives of the poor and raise the living standard of all its citizens. Some of the strategies to alleviate poverty include a cost of living allowance (COLA) in the 1960s to adjust wages to inflationary trends, b. a Debo wage review panel, prices and rent decree of the military era, c. National Minimum Wage Act of Shagari administration, d. the Directorate of Food, Roads and Rural Infrastructure DFFRI, of 1986 to aid food production, revamp rural infrastructure like roads, bridges, water, electricity and sanitation, e. Directorate for Social Mobilization, Self-Reliance, Economic Recovery and Social Justice MAMSERF, Better Life Program for Rural Women, BLP, under the leadership of the First Lady, Maryam Babangida, G. Family Support Program, FSP, chaired by Mrs. Abacha, H. National Directorate for Employment, NDE, I. People's Bank, Community Bank, headed by the renowned social crusader, Tai Solarin, J. Vision 2010 Project of Abacha. Nigeria's Poverty Reduction Strategy Plan LPRSP, of Obasanjo administration built on economic growth with inclusive development, social sector and human resources development and protection from various pressing manifestations of poverty, Federal Republic of Nigeria, 2003. This strategy includes rural agricultural development, infrastructure rehabilitation, privatization, environmental sustainability, economic governance, HIV/AIDS, and so on. Specifically, National Economic and Empowerment and Development Strategy needs calls for attention. The strategy was a response to the development challenges of Nigeria. It was planned for seriously pursued with the assistance of the World Bank, having in view the laying of a solid foundation for sustainable poverty reduction, employment generation, wealth creation, and value reorientation, National Planning Commission, 2004. 3. And believing that Nigeria has all it takes, human and material resources, to become the strongest economy in Africa, and one of the leading economies in the world in the longer term, National Planning Commission, 2004. 3. Needs has its goal as the mobilization of the resources of Nigeria to make a fundamental break with the failures of the past and bequeath a united and prosperous nation to the generations to come, National Planning Commission, 2004. 3. And in its evaluation of the past decade's development programs and activities, Needs identified some problems and proffered solutions in its objectives and goals. Some of the problems are poverty and inequality, weak and inappropriate public sector, poor economic management and hostile environment for private sector growth. In order to address the identified problems, it sets as its objectives as 1. Empowerment of people, distribution of basic needs of life based on the principle of equality and equity. Some of these needs are adequate potable water, sanitation, nutrition, clothing, shelter, basic education and health care, as well as physical security and the means of earning a living. 2. Job creation, training people in skills relevant to their immediate work environment and by promoting integrated rural development in collaboration with the states. 3. Creating affordable housing, houses that will be affordable for all, and means of achieving this are A. Make it easier for developers to buy land on which to build affordable housing. B. Cut the cost of building houses by encouraging the use of local building materials. C. Train a new generation of architects on how to design low-cost housing. D. Enable construction companies and local and state governments to assume responsibility for providing low-cost housing. 4. Deurbanization, a process whereby the vote of urbanization is being reduced. Discouraging rural-urban influx by rural empowerment by the provision of infrastructure, urban resettlement scheme, introduction of megacity e.g. Lagos, proper management of urban centers e.g. transportation, health care delivery, environmental management, solid, liquid waste and air pollution, erosion control, urban decay. 5. Improving health care services. This is aimed to target diseases such as malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS and reproductive health-related illness. A stronger emphasis is placed on health education to make Nigerians to be more aware of their rights and obligations regarding health services, as well as promotion of disease prevention. 6. Protecting the vulnerable, preventing people from getting poor or poorer. Protection of rural and urban poor, PLWHA, women, widows, widowers, victim of ethnic violence, crime, unemployment or loss of income. 7. Improving environmental health with means of achieving this include A. Articulate a national environmental health policy and national environmental health action plan. B. Review and harmonize existing health laws. C. Develop environmental health performance indicators. D. Develop a national solid waste management master plan. E. Promote the safe use of pesticides and other agrochemicals. F. Increase antenatal, postnatal and family planning services. G. Intensify the campaign to eradicate harmful traditional practices such as female genital mutilation and child marriage. 8. Power sector development objectives include A. Generate 10,000 MW a day by 2007. B. Explore alternative energy sources such as coal, solar power, wind power and hydropower. C. Deregulate the power sector to allow increased private sector participations. 9. Enforcing anti-corruption laws. This is aimed at tackling corruption and promoting transparency and accountability, good governance. Its action plan includes Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) and Independent Corruption Practices and Other Related Crimes Commission (ICPC). 10. Environmental management objectives. A. Bringing environmental and waste pollution in cities and urban centers under control. B. Foster private sector participation in environmental protection. C. Comply with international standards in controlling and monitoring of environment. D. Standardize the use of equipment in environmental services. E. Reverse the loss of biodiversity. F. Phase out persistent organic pollutants. G. Phase out ozone-depleting substances in order to achieve its objectives. Needs set up its key strategies, and these include I. Privatize, deregulate and liberalize key sectors of the economy. E. Coordinate national sector development strategies for agriculture, industry and services. E. Develop infrastructure, especially electricity, transport and water. IV. Address the problem of financing the real sector and mobilize long-term savings and investment. V. Create effective regulatory regimes that involve environmental standards. And Vi. Target programs that promote private sector growth and development. These strategies are couched, first by identifying some of the peculiar sector-specific issues, policy imperatives, and then the selected strategies. Some of the strategies needs have mapped out for each priority sector to achieve the objective of creating a responsive, modern and globally competitive economy are agriculture and food security. The target here is to restore agriculture to its former status as a leading sector in the economy in terms of its contribution to GDP, supply of raw materials, employment generation, source of export, local consumption and hence food security. The strategy to be employed include 1. Vigorous implementation of the presidential initiatives on cassava, rice, vegetable oil, sugar, livestock, tree crops and cereals. The government hopes to generate as much as N3 billion annually from the export of agricultural products. 2. Strengthening of agricultural research and revitalization of agricultural training and streamlining the extension delivery system, including the involvement of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and opinion leaders. 3. A review of the agricultural input supply and distribution system with a view to developing effective and sustainable private sector-led input supply and distribution system. 4. Manufacturing, including micro, small and medium enterprises. The target here is to increase the annual growth of the manufacturing sector by at least 7% per annum. Increase capacity utilization to about 70% and contribute 70% of total investment industries by private sector. Strategies are A. Promotion of the production of quality goods and services in Nigeria to facilitate a competitive export-oriented manufacturing sector. B. Implementation of government procurement policy that patronizes locally produced goods and services, especially of SMEs. C. Provision of targeted incentives, like tax deductibility, for science, technology and research and development spending. 5. Service sector includes information and communication technology, tourism, entertainment and banking and other financial services. Strategies here are A. Pursue a local content policy in the manufacture of communication, telecommunication, electrical and electronic equipment, handsets, accessories and components. B. Concession existing tourism attraction entertainment and provide support infrastructure for tourism in Nigeria. C. Strengthen the regulatory agency for the entertainment industry to facilitate healthy competition, upgrade quality, ensure appropriate controls, monitor standards effectively and promote standardization of production of quality films in Nigeria. D. Restructure, strengthen and rationalize the regulatory and supervisory framework in the financial sector. 6. Oil, gas and solid minerals. The government, among other targets, intends to achieve a reserve level of 40 billion barrels by the year 2007 and an OPEC quota of 7%. 10% strategies to be employed are A. Design and facilitate, in collaboration with the private sector, the implementation of a national oil and gas policy as well as a national gas grid system. B. Streamline and codify existing incentive in the gas sector. C. Review the Land Use Act to facilitate entry into the solid minerals sector. Despite all the strategies in place, Nigeria is still poor. It is ranked one of the 25 poorest countries in the world UNDP-AX, and occupies the 157th position in the World Human Development Index HDI, UNDP-B, 285 to 391. It remains the poorest member of the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC, although it is the sixth largest oil producer within the Cartered UNDP and UNDP. With the benefit of hindsight, the impact of seeds on the national development is minimal. Nigeria is a member of international and global community and therefore is not immune from the positive and negative effects of globalization from the point of view of industrialization and technology. Nigeria's benefit from globalization, science and technology includes education, telecommunication, medicine, transportation and trade among others. However, in the process of development, in the past 4 decades from independence 1960 to the 1990s and despite the existence of needs in 2004-2008, Nigeria polluted its seas and rivers, destroying habitats and killing marine life. Air is polluted and inhaling poisonous gases like carbon monoxide can lead to fatigue, high blood pressure and insomnia. Acid rain is being experienced and erosion is common. Water, soil and air pollution are also making it difficult for local farmers, hunters and pastoralists to make a decent living. Poverty drives people to cut down trees for firewood and over-farm fragile soils for their immediate survival. Eganjobi, 2005, 272. Both developmental and environmental problems are formidable and the country has to face them squarely or face greater impoverishment and degradation. Environmental management is particularly necessary and its major aim is to avoid stressing a valued ecosystem beyond the limits of its resilience, stability and carrying capacity. Oyeshola, 1995, 8 and 80. In addition to a few of the major national environmental difficulties catalogued above and despite the reality of needs on ground, Nigeria also has to contend with global environmental problems such as climate change, global warming, ozone layer depletion and transboundary movement of hazardous wastes and toxic chemicals. Some of the manifestations of environmental degradation. Oyeshola, 1998, 51-60, threaten the well-being of people in many parts of Nigeria and is a prominent factor in the agitation and violent conflicts in the oil-producing Niger Delta. Adeleke, 2003, 2-3. Because of the centrality and economic importance of the region to the overall development of the nation, an overview of the environmental degradation of the region is necessary here. The Niger Delta region of Nigeria is Africa's largest delta covering some 7,000 square kilometers. It contains the largest mangrove forest in the world, 5,406,000 square kilometers, and about 1/3 of this area is made up of wetlands. It is the homeland of the people now so constituted together, politically in 9 states of the South Delta, Anambra, Bayelsa, Edo, Rivers, Ondo, Abia, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom, which forms the basis of the economic life of the Nigerian Federation. It is a common knowledge that the Niger Delta environment has been too degraded that it is already endangering the livelihood and health of the people in several communities. Given the dominant monocultural character of the economy of the nation, the Niger Delta region bears the brunt of being the goose that lay the golden eggs. Ever since the discovery of oil in Nigeria in the 1950s, the country has been suffering the negative environmental consequences of oil development. The growth of the country's oil industry combined with the lack of environmental regulations led to the substantial damage of Nigeria's environment, especially in the Niger Delta region, the nerve of the country's industry. The Niger Delta's main environmental challenges result majorly from I. Oil spills and E. Gas flaring. Oil spillage. Oil spills in the Niger Delta have been a regular occurrence and the resultant degradation of the surrounding environment has caused significant tension between the people living in the region and the multinational oil companies operating there. The magnitude of crude oil pollution is incredible because of its devastating consequences on both aerial and terrestrial environs, which is undoubtedly tantamount to an irreversible chain effects on both the biodiversity and human safety. Crude oil or petroleum became a richly available commodity about a century ago, and now the efficient use of this black gold cannot be overemphasized. Oil was discovered in commercial quantity in 1956 and, in fact, that first shipment of oil for export was made in 1958 with nearly 5,000 barrels per day. The Guardian on Sunday, July 29, 1990. 2. Much attention was not given to the environmental implications of the oil industry until the late 1980s, when oil alone accounted for almost 75% of the nation's annual revenue. The danger posed by the oil industry to the environment is so enormous that the oil-producing areas in the country suffer more problems of environmental pollution than any other part of the country. The crude oil contains hydrocarbon component, while some contain, in addition, chemicals containing oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur and trace metals. Oil slicks occasioned by oil spillage could either directly destroy the aquatic organism, plant, fishes, shellfish, or deprive the area of free oxygen. When crude oil spills on water or touches the ground, or perhaps the leaf of a yam and cassava, spreading immediately takes place and the trees begin to dry up simultaneously. The gaseous and liquid component of the oil evaporates. Some dissolve in water and even oxidize, and yet some undergo bacterial changes and eventually sink to the bottom by gravitational pull. Thus, the soil is contaminated, with a gross effect on the terrestrial life. As the evaporation of the lower molecular weight components affects aerial life, so the dissolution of the less volatile components with the resulting emulsified water and affects aquatic life. Crude oil spills resulting into petrol, photochemical oxidation and bacterial degradation are all hazardous and significantly long-lasting on the environment. When petroleum or crude oil floats on water surface, it is invariably exposed to attack by atmospheric oxygen and solar radiation, the result of which is degradation to molecular weight component that subsequently degenerates into water-soluble ones. The weight of this attack depends on the weight of oil slick, because petroleum as well as its refined products is a complex mixture of a wide range of hydrocarbon fractions with sulfur, oxygen, and nitrogen compounds. These fractions, which include straight or short-branched alkanes, pseudoalkanes, aromatic hydrocarbons and heterocyclic compounds, form a potential carbon and energy sources for microbial activities and hence biodegradable. Besides, oil drilling disturbs the habitats of marine organism, limiting mating and energy recycling within the ecosystem. This, in turn, reduces the overall marine food production. It has often been argued that the noise that is produced in the process of oil drilling drives aquatic organism away from the area of drilling. The above scenario of the Niger Delta is just the general picture of the hazards which oil exploration could cause in any community. A specific or peculiar implication to the oil-producing areas in Nigeria would be appreciated, if a critical attention is given to Kola Kusemiju's observation about oil production in Nigeria. He stated that oil is one of the most widely contaminants of our aquatic environment. The Guardian, June 18, 1993, 7. The crude oil finds its way into the ocean through sources like transportation and production accident. This includes oil spillage, well blowouts and pipeline leakages. Indeed, oil has not only affected the aquatic environment alone, it equally affects the soil, the atmosphere, the vegetation as well as the human habitats of that vicinity. These areas have equally suffered massive pollution of water and land, destruction of artisanal fishery due to various cases of oil spills. Some of the areas include Obaji, Amola and former Soromekan and Obadere, 1998. 44. The most pathetic thing about oil spillage, however, is that it does not affect the area where the incidents occurred alone. It goes further through the coast and exposes the lives of other coastal communities to danger. For instance, about 10 years ago, some coastal communities in Ondo State shared from the devastation caused by the light crude oil spill from Mobile burst pipe in Akwa Ibom. This resulted in the pollution of the drinking water and mass killing of the seafood, which forms the means of livelihood of the residents. Tell, September 21, 1998, 30, making life unbearable for them. Gas flaring. There is more flaring of gas in Nigeria's Niger Delta region than anywhere in the world. Although estimates are not reliable, but roughly 2.5 billion cubic feet of gas associated with crude oil is wasted in this way on a daily basis. Niger Delta is followed by Russia, Iran, Algeria, Mexico, Venezuela, Indonesia and United States. Saturday Punch, February 24, 2007, 9. Thus, Nigeria's gas flaring is equal to 40% of all Africa's natural gas consumption in the year 2001 alone. The flares contributed more greenhouse gases than those of sub-Saharan Africa combined. It contains toxins that not only affect the life and health of the local communities, but also exposes Niger Delta residents to an increased risk of premature death, child respiratory illness, asthma and cancer. Routine gas flaring began at the start of the industry in the Delta at the very end of British rule. Chevron, Texaco, Agip, Shell, ExxonMobil, Total, Fina Elf in joint ventures with the state-owned Nigeria National Petroleum Corporations has carried this flaring of associated gas to world record heights. Currently, there is no comprehensive study that has been carried out in respect of the health impacts of gas flaring communities in the Delta, including the level of pollutants in the food chain. However, communities firmly believe that the flaring is damaging their health, reducing crop production and damaging their homes. Gas flaring releases additional pollutants, such as sulfur dioxide, dioxins, nitrogen oxides, toluene, xylene and hydrogen sulfide. The composition of the rain that falls as a result of flaring are the primary causes of acid rain, which include emissions of sulfur dioxide, SO2, and nitrogen oxides, NO, which combine with atmospheric moisture to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid respectively. Acid rain acidifies lakes and streams and damages vegetations. In addition, acid rain accelerates the decay of building materials and paints. Before falling to the earth, SO2 and NOx gases contribute to visibility degradation, and in Niger Delta only dew is often seen on collected rainwater. All the above stated manifestations of environmental degradation are real and essentially unsustainable socio-economic activities of human beings are responsible. In the same vein, solutions to them must be found by human beings. Therefore, science and technology that have helped bring solutions to some previous human problems must also be part of the efforts that must be sought in order to bring about solutions to current environmental and developmental problems. However, it must be established categorically that science and technology, instrument of development, are not necessarily neutral because their choices are political, ideological and religiously made. If Nigeria is to make a fundamental break with the failures of the past and bequeath a united and prosperous nation to the generations to come, National Planning Commission, 2004, 3 Value Reorientation, is called for, as well as good governance, especially in the developmental projects like Ajaokuta Steel Project, The Nation, April 7, 2008, 6 and 7, characterized by minimizing corruption to its lowest acceptable level in Nigeria, transparency and accountability. Nigeria, with all its endowments of human and natural resources, is a gift to the citizens, and in this connection, all stakeholders must be involved in the struggle to develop, preserve and protect the environment. Degraded environment cannot guarantee sustainable development. Thank you for reading through Chapter 5 of my book, Sustainable Development, Issues and Challenges for Nigeria. Chapter 6 is already running on this channel, Environmental Tonic. Thank you.